It was 2001 when the chief of an investment bank predicted that 4 emerging economies would rise to the very top and dominate a big portion of the global markets by the year 2050. Jim O'Neill from Goldman Sachs was referring to Brazil, Russia, India, and China, so he coined the term BRIC to refer to them. In the almost 2 decades since, China has rapidly grown to become the second largest economy in the world, and according to most predictions, soon to be number 1. The first official BRIC meeting was held in Russia in 2009 as the countries began to act as a bloc. Later in 2010, South Africa was invited to join the group, adding the S to the acronym. Together, they formed a powerful coalition.
The BRICS, they want to reform global governance, to correct, to mitigate Western biases in that regard. So that's why the group created its own bank, the New Development Bank. Apart from that, the CRA, the Contingency Reserve Arrangement, and apart from the head of state, head of government meetings, the group also has several networks involving scientists, bureaucrats in order to foster cooperation to tackle common challenges in issues ranging from health to science and technology.
The NDB, headquartered in Shanghai, is also known as the BRICS Bank. It has approved more than $9 billion in loans, mainly for infrastructure projects.
Many would say that the BRICS may be the starting point for challenging the dominance of the US dollar. However, thus far, we haven't seen that happening, simply because in all its initiatives, including the New Development Bank, the currency of reference is the US dollar, not renminbi or rubles or Brazilian real. Possibly the renminbi may be the next challenge to US dollar. However, my bet is that it's more likely to happen through bilateral Chinese action rather than through a coordinated action that will demand a collective effort on the part of all BRICS.
Politics play a secondary role in this bloc. For example, Brazil is quite close to the United States. But in recent meetings with Chinese leaders, including President Xi Jinping, Brazil's far-right president Jair Bolsonaro expressed his interest in having closer commercial ties.
I think Brazil and China understand themselves as a strategic partner, not only because Brazil is a traditional exporter of raw materials, but basically because the trade war between China and the US has opened out an opportunity for Brazil to become a more strategic partner to China. We can export food and energy, so things that China really needs. So there's no room for ideological talks. Maybe Brazil and China is going to reinforce a strong partnership.
About 1,000 kilometers away from the BRICS host city and Brazil's capital, Brasilia, is Sao Paulo, home to one of the world's largest stock markets, the B3, Brazil's stock exchange and its economic heartbeat. One of the largest companies listed at the B3 is the Votorantim Group, a huge conglomerate in Latin America, operating in various sectors such as finance, energy, iron, and steel.
Brazil has a more dynamic economy these days. We prompt for stronger growth next year, and also have a more stable political environment. So both together are reinforcing the confidence. Interest rates are too low, so Brazil is is becoming resilient to this global environment.
18 years on, the bloc has multiplied its numbers and agreements. Could it expand in other ways?
I think other countries may join the NDB, the New Development Bank, but not necessarily other countries will join the BRICS. It's always hard for countries to coordinate very large groups. Let's just think of the G7. It's a pretty small number. People have been discussing for ages whether G7 should be expanded. Large part is not because of clashing interests between current and prospective members, but simply because even if there is a common agenda, it's always harder to coordinate with a large number of members than with a small number of states. There were proposals of including Indonesia, of including Egypt. Some people would even claim that Nigeria could be a better representative of Africa than South Africa is. But all of those countries, they may be also relevant emerging markets, but clearly they are not as politically relevant as the BRICS members are.
Some are looking at Mexico, the second largest economy in the region and the 15th largest in the world, as a good addition to BRICS. So far, it seems the bloc's priority is not making the group bigger, but stronger. For Luis Castro Neves, a former ambassador to China, new opportunities for trade are emerging.
They are switching from an export-led economy to one which is more geared to the internal market and to the increased consumption. This perhaps opens new windows of opportunity for us, for our exports to China, for our partnership with China, and perhaps we might have a more strategic approach in our relationship.
Brazil is massive in size. It's the 9th largest economy in the world, with a GDP equaling that of several South American economies. And it's vast in territory, the 5th biggest by land size on the planet. So how does it stack up to the other BRICS countries?
I think that the role of technology in the New World, and mainly in the New World economy, has been increasing quite a lot. It's perhaps the most important issue that we'll see in this first half of the 21st century. We are living more and more in a globalized world, in which processes of production have become international, in which, for instance, protectionism, which is a tool frequently used by governments, but protectionism has already ceased to be an instrument of protection, given the fact that the processes of production are international, that we are living in a globalized world. And in this context, I think that the issues of technology and services will play an ever-growing and more important role in the world of tomorrow.
Another prediction by Goldman Sachs' Jim O'Neill: by 2035, BRICS will match the size of the G7, the world's most advanced 7 economies, with the emerging potentially surpassing the established.